Terrific, terrific. Thank you all for coming. For those of us that represent South Shore districts, and I'm Steve Rhodes, incidentally, I'm the county legislator for the 19th district, which represents the areas of Seaford, Wantagh, Belmore, Merrick, North Merrick, and Freeport, portion of Freeport. I'm also joined here by County Legislator Denise Ford, Legislator James Kennedy, Legislator Laura Curran, Legislator Dennis Dunn, and Legislator Bill Gaylord. For those of us that represent South Shore areas, and I grew up in South Wantagh, South of Merrick Road, and live now in South Belmore, South of Merrick Road, Hurricane Sandy is a very personal issue for all of us. For those of us that weren't personally affected, we certainly all have family, friends, and constituents who were personally affected. And what makes it so devastating is the fact that we all have a safe zone. You know, we all have a place that we like to go to, which is our sanctuary. And for most of us, that's our home. And what made Hurricane Sandy so devastating for so many families is that this directly impacted their home. And here we are 3.5 years later, and we have the reality that so many families are still fighting that battle. You know, each of us walk around our districts when we go door to door, and seemingly in every neighborhood, there are homes that are abandoned. There are families that are still challenged. And behind every one of those abandoned homes is the story of a family who has been devastated as a result of the impacts of Hurricane Sandy. One of the most frustrating things that I've had to deal with since I've been a county legislator for 1.5 years, and many of those behind me have been dealing with for significantly longer than me, is the fact that the county is seemingly powerless to try and impact many of the challenges that Sandy families have faced. Delays with FEMA, the frustration in dealing with New York Rising. I had a constituent, actually my next door neighbor, contact me the other day. Received a letter at their house. They had, New York Rising sent an estimator that the damage to Hurricane Sandy would cost $41,000 to repair. They received $65,000 in benefit from insurance, from New York Rising, and from FEMA funds. And they got a letter saying that you have got to pay back $25,000. When in reality, it cost them, even though the estimate was $41,000, actually doing the work cost them $125,000 to do it. So instead of there being a $25,000 overpayment, it was really, in theory, a $60,000 or $65,000 underpayment, the difference between what they actually paid to repair their home and what they actually received in the totality of benefits. And they are lucky, because so many families haven't even received that. They had the wherewithal to be able to pay that money out of pocket, but for families that didn't, for families that don't have the means to do that, they've got to find someplace else to live while they're underwater in their house, literally and unfortunately, figuratively, following the storm. So now they're paying to stay in an apartment, they're paying to stay in a hotel, they're paying to stay wherever they're staying with family and friends, still trying to pay a mortgage on their house, still struggling to deal with mortgage companies, to deal with foreclosure in many instances, to deal with bankruptcy in many instances. And so each of us that live in those South Shore districts have really struggled to try and find a way that we can positively impact the situation. And that really has been, in many instances, through education, trying to bring resources in contact with the people that actually need them, through Sandy education fairs, through workshops, and much of that has been done as well through Michael Rabb, who is our county, well, Michael, has been done through our Hurricane Sandy, hey Michael, has been done through Nassau County's Hurricane Sandy liaison. He has been an invaluable resource to him, and thank you, Michael. In the midst of him living in South Freeport and dealing with his own complete destruction of his home in the aftermath, he has been a leader in trying to assist Hurricane Sandy families and takes it as personally as if it were his own home and family, in many instances more so. but thank you, Michael. We're standing here today to announce Local Law 295-16. That is a local law to amend Local Law 1 of 2013, which is to provide relief from fees charged by various departments of county government to victims of Hurricane and Superstorm Sandy. You know, I think that when that local law was passed, with an expiration of, we believe, with an extended expiration of December 31st of 2015, at the time it was passed, I don't think anybody thought that you were still going to be dealing with the issues related to Hurricane Sandy. You know, the fact that here we are 3.5 years later and only now are funds coming through New York Rising for so many families to be able to lift their homes, to be able to make the necessary repairs to put their lives back together, I don't think anybody really anticipated that. And Laura Kern, Legislator Kern, did a wonderful job in bringing this to our attention. And we kind of took the ball and ran with it in a bipartisan fashion to be able to try and piece together an extension of that legislation through December 31st of 2017, so as not to add to the already tremendous burden that homeowners are facing in their recovery in their extended recovery from Hurricane Sandy. And to speak a little more about that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Legislator Kern.
Thank you very much, Legislator Rhodes, and thank you all for being here today. You know, sometimes we at the county do feel a little bit helpless in helping our constituents who are suffering from Sandy because they're dealing with the federal government and the state government. But this is something that we can do for our constituents to make it just a little bit easier. My district, the parts of my district that were really badly hurt and still are hurting from Sandy, Baldwin, Freeport, and a nice portion of Oceanside that was really, really badly hurt. And you know, I talk to people all the time, and after nearly 4 years of applications and forms and tangled miles of red tape, revolving door of state caseworkers, some of our neighbors are now finally in a position to make their houses livable and resilient. Right after the storm, the county stepped in and helped, and today we can continue that help to get people their houses raised, to do the work necessary to make their houses resilient and livable again. These include sewer disconnect and reconnect fees, and waiving the fees for pre-demolition inspection. I thank the administration and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for taking the ball and running with it and making this happen so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Legislator Kern. And you know, just to add as well, this will also cover also cover county clerk fees with regard to the indexing and block indexing and re-indexing. And next, I wanted to call on Legislator Denise Ford.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Michael, for a lot of the work that he has done on behalf of those who were impacted by Sandy, and he really has done a yeoman's job in getting the word out and helping so many of our residents. I also want to thank both Legislator Kern and Rhodes for their continued effort and to make sure to bring to our attention the need to extend this legislation so that those who suffered from Sandy and have to rebuild don't have to have an added cost to rebuilding their homes. You know, Steve touched upon it. You know, a lot of times many of the residents have to rebuild. If those that are lucky enough to have the money in their savings account and can start the process, they're the ones that have been moving forward. A lot of them, though, too, the money that they took out of their savings and different accounts that they had found themselves where they took it maybe out of their 401k or whatever, ended up with a cost due to the government saying that early withdrawal, and I had many of my residents that had to pay fees, you know, for that. So for all of us, so even though with something like this, anything that we can do to help the residents to defray additional costs in the rebuilding, I think it's very, very important. And I think the message has to get out there to let everybody know that the county has not forgotten. I mean, I represent the areas, you know, the Long Beach Barrier Island, you know, Island Park. I have the 5 towns. Probably about, at the time of Sandy, 90% or 95% of my district went underwater. And I was fortunate that even though my house was impacted, I only lost half of it, and but it was not my main living space. So I was able to take my insurance money and the money that I had in my savings and rebuild my home. I didn't have to go to FEMA or to New York Rising. So I avoided that nightmare, and I'm happy about it. I may be poorer for it, but I'm happier. And but just to let you know that there are a lot of people still rebuilding. A lot of people, even after finishing their homes, are still waiting on the final payment from New York Rising. So I find it unbelievable that New York Rising is asking people to pay them back when they haven't even fully compensated the people that they promised to pay. So, but we will continue doing our work on behalf of our residents. We have not forgotten. We know that we're in hurricane season now, so we're all a little bit on edge. But I thank you very much, and I just want the residents to know we have not forgotten, we will never forget, and we will always advocate for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Ford, and that's such an important point. If there is one message that I would love the residents that are affected by Hurricane Sandy to take away, is that even though Republicans and Democrats may have their differences on a wide variety of issues, that we have not forgotten Hurricane Sandy residents, even if the federal government, the state government sometimes seems as though they have, and that we will fight for you in a bipartisan way to make sure that we can do everything we can to ease your burden. And I'm going to turn over to Michael Rabb for a moment, because since we are on the topic of things that we're all trying to do to assist Sandy families, there is a Sandy Recovery Through Education Fair coming up tomorrow, which Michael Rabb is going to talk a little bit about.